Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Uriel. Uriel, the light of God existed before any monster walked the earth. The true power of the holy light will be accessible only for a master player. Are you the chosen one? And here we have one of the most difficult monsters to get in the whole entire game. He has a really cool design, looks really angelic, really godly, which is what they're going for. But like I always say, designs are one thing, let's check out his stats. His power is 3047. Currently in the game there are 16 light legendary monsters, and with a power like this, it puts him in 15th place. That's right, he's second from the bottom. So he's clearly not designed to be an attacker. His life is 31,366, and that's actually a pretty good life. In fact, it puts him tied for 3rd place with General Ingvar, which is great because with Uriel, you want to stay alive as long as possible. And as for his speed, he has 3,245, and once again, this puts him in 15th place. That's right, once again, second from the bottom. Not a really good power, not a really good speed. And as for his trait, he is immune to blind, which is actually a pretty good trait. This is very common with light monsters, and light monsters also have lots of skills that give out blind. So having a trait like this will work out perfectly in Team Wars, where you're gonna encounter light monsters that can blind you. And now let's check out his skills. We have Sharp Dictum, Nimbus Intervention, and Fallen Angels. Deals heavy light damage to a single target. Wow, this is pretty bad. So this targets a single enemy, 80 damage. Again, it's one single enemy. It's light based, it's not even special based. And again, it's one single enemy. Let me highlight that, a single target, that's not good. But even more so, because this monster has a pretty low power and wasn't designed to be an attacker, I'm not sure why they gave him an attack that's meant for an attacker. So overall, a pretty poor special. So then we move on to skills group 1. We have Stunning Dictum, Catholican, and Ethereal Nimbus. And none of the skills from skills group 1 are worth running. I mean, just check out Catholican. 50% chance to remove all negative effects to all friendly monsters. What the heck is that, a 50% chance for your own team? We haven't seen that before. So yeah, skills group 1, just completely forget about it. So then that moves us over to skills group 2. And with this monster, there isn't really an ideal skill set. It depends what purpose you're going to use this monster for. If you're going to use him for PvP, if you're going to use him for Team Wars, there's completely different builds. So first I'm going to discuss each individual skill, and then I'm going to talk about the different builds. So starting things off with Faceless Dictum, deals moderate special damage and may blind target. Deals 40 damage to a single enemy, costs 30 stamina with no cooldown, and it gives blind. So right off the bat, the cool thing about this skill is that it's spammable because it has no cooldown. It can blind and it's special base, so going up against light monsters, it's perfect. Unfortunately, the damage is pretty low, 40, especially when you add that to the fact that he has a pretty low base power to start with. Next, we have Divine Protection. Remove all negative effects and gives 15% heal, 15% energy, and a mini shield. Requires cooldown. So this skill is applied to a single ally. It costs 25 stamina and it has a 2-turn cooldown. It removes debuffs from that ally. It gives them 15% energy and heals them by 15%, and at the same time it applies a mini shield. This is a pretty good supportive skill, especially in the context of Team Wars where you're going to be going up against another light monster and they can AoE blind you, AoE daze you. You can use this skill to remove that negative effect on one of your allies or on Uriel himself if he needs it, because keep in mind that I mentioned early on that this monster needs to stay alive in the game. And lastly, we have Celestial Nimbus. Deals moderate special damage to all enemies, 50% daze to entire team, requires cooldown. This is an AoE that deals 35 damage, it costs 35 stamina, and it only has a 1-turn cooldown. So that's actually pretty nice. It's an AoE with only a 1-turn cooldown, and it has a 50% chance to daze. Chances are this won't be landing too often, but if it does land, that would be pretty nice. Once again, considering this monster's low base power, you can argue whether this skill is good or not so good. And now we're down to skills group 3, Devastating Dictum. Deals high special damage and may daze target, requires cooldown. This skill targets a single enemy, dealing 50 damage, it costs 35 stamina, and it has a 1-turn cooldown, and this skill dazes the enemy. So in my opinion, this is one of his better skills, especially if you're planning to use this monster in Team War. For one, it deals special damage, not light based damage, so against the light monster, it's going to be perfect. Second, it dazes instead of blinds. Lots of light monsters are immune to blind, whereas not that many, or actually I think not any light monster is immune to daze, so this is perfect to reduce that monster's accuracy and reduce their power. And it does have a short 1-turn cooldown. Now the one thing I don't like about this skill is the stamina cost. 35 seems a little bit too high for me. And next we have the mother of all skills, Holy Resurrection. This is what Uriel is most famous for. Revive friendly monster with full life and energy, requires cooldown. So it targets a single ally, a single dead ally. It costs 60 stamina points and it has a high 6-turn cooldown. And for a lot of people, this is basically the only reason that this monster is worth running. In Team Wars, this can be amazing because as many of you know, it is really hard to keep the common alive, to keep the uncommon alive, and to keep the rare alive, especially if that rare isn't ranked up. So using Uriel on your team can help you secure 3 coins for your team. Now however, there is a downside. So let's suppose it's common, light, and some other elements. Most of the time the other element is going to be the denier, because for light monsters we don't really have a good denier. So if the other element is deny and you have a common, then by default the light category has to be an attacker. So normally you'd want to bring someone like Lathe, someone like Lao, or actually if you have demise, you would use demise with all speed runes, and then the other element would be your attacker. But anyways, most of the time you're going to have to run a light attacker, so that does kind of put you in a situation. So this pretty much means if you're planning to use Uriel in that kind of scenario where you have common, light, and some other element, if the other element is going to be the deny monster, then you have to make Uriel an attacker, which is why I said there are so many different skill sets you can run on this monster. Even though inherently he's not an attacker, you're essentially going to have to give him strength runes and make him an attacker, and then you're going to utilize Holy Resurrection to recover your dead monster and hopefully secure 3 coins. And that's pretty much the main idea of it, so I'll get back to this later. Let's discuss Archangelic Nimbus. Deals moderate special damage to all enemies, 50% blind entire enemy, requires cooldown. So it's an AoE, deals 40 damage, costs 30 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown, while at the same time having that 50% chance to blind enemy monsters. Now when you're going up against a light monster, chances are they're going to be immune to blind. So then you do have that possibility to mobilize the other 2 monsters, but at the same time it's only 50%, and what we know from experience is that 50% chance that rarely lands. So unless this monster has increased accuracy, don't count on that blind to land. Nonetheless, the fact that this is 40 damage and a 2-turn cooldown, that's also pretty nice. So I already mentioned that Holy Resurrection is the move this monster is most well known for. And considering this monster doesn't have the highest base power, and from the skills you can pretty much tell that he's meant to be a supportive monster. So if you're planning to use him in player versus player, although to be completely honest, if you want to use this monster on player versus player just to utilize Holy Resurrection, probably don't need to do that, because in player versus player you get to pick your own battles, you bring in a deny monster and attacker. Most of the time you should be winning in 2 or 3 turns, but if you want to have more fun, I guess you can use this monster, and in that case you would want to make this monster completely supportive, or actually this would work especially well in an adventure map. So let's switch the conversation and talk about adventure map. If you want to make Uriel for adventure map, you should use the following skills: Holy Resurrection, Divine Protection, Faithless Dictum, Devastating Dictum. And for runes, you'd want to give this monster 1 life rune, maybe 2 life runes. The important thing is that this monster does not die, so if you're giving him 1 life rune, give him 2 team speed runes, or if you're giving him 2 life runes, then give him 1 team speed rune, and the team speed is to help your deny monster go first. And you would probably need this monster against the boss. If your attacker dies, if your deny monster dies, you'd want to recover them and then proceed with the battle. And now if you're planning to use this monster in Team Wars and you need to make him offensive, which most of the time you probably will need to, it gets a little more difficult trying to figure out the proper skill set. The one thing we know for sure is that you need Holy Resurrection. The only reason you'd want to use this monster in a light war is to utilize Holy Resurrection. And like I mentioned previously, if the rules for war are like common, some other element, and light, most likely your light monster has to be an attacker, which means this monster is going to need strength runes. Now considering you need this monster to be alive to use Holy Resurrection, the runes for this monster could either be 1 strength rune, 1 life rune, 1 speed rune, or 2 strength runes, 1 speed rune. You yourself have to make the decision if it's worth sacrificing the life rune on Uriel in order to give him more power. If he has more power, he can finish off the enemy faster. However, he's also more vulnerable. On the other side, if you give him a life rune instead of another strength rune, it's going to take him longer to finish off the enemy, so there's really a big trade-off there. So anyways, you need Holy Resurrection, and one skill set you can do is to run both of the AoEs, Archangelic Nimbus, Celestial Nimbus, and then one other skill. That skill's up to you. And I think running both AoEs would work especially well if you choose to give this monster 2 strength runes. Because let's be honest about something, if we give a monster high enough strength runes, let's just suppose you could give him 2 level 10 strength runes, then even though this monster has a low base power, the AoEs would pretty much wipe out the enemy team. That's just the way it is. With runes, anything is possible. And to help you guys decide what the 4th skill should be, in my opinion, it should either be Devastating Dictum or Divine Protection. Divine Protection, as you know, heals, gives a mini shield, removes debuffs, all that good stuff. Now if for runes you give Uriel 2 strength runes, running this skill might not benefit you too much because you're missing out on using your runes and you're only going to heal 15% and give yourself a mini shield. Yeah, Uriel has a pretty nice tanky life, but you know, it's not that big of a benefit. Whereas Devastating Dictum on the other hand, given the fact that you're going to have 2 strength runes on him, this can be a lot more powerful. However, if you choose to give Uriel only 1 strength rune and instead give him a life rune, then Divine Protection will be a lot more usable because of that mini shield and because of that heal. So once again, it completely depends on the kind of build you're going for and the kind of strategy you plan to use. And another skill set that I think is really usable is Holy Resurrection, Devastating Dictum, Faithless Dictum, and then either Divine Protection or Archangelic Nimbus. So once again, go back to the scenario where it's a team wars involving common, light, and some other elements. Defeating the enemy common monster isn't that difficult. Quite possibly your deny monster, when it does its AoE deny skill, that might actually wipe out the enemy common. Thus, you could argue that Uriel doesn't really need 2 AoEs, and so he'd be better if he had single target hits, which is why you're running both of his Dictum skills. You'd have Devastating Dictum specifically to use against the enemy light monster, and then you'd have Faithless Dictum to use against the enemy monster that isn't going to be immune to blind, so the other elements. And if just like you, the other element is supposed to be the deny monster, that's awesome because then you're going to be blinding the enemy deny monster, So if that enemy monster is to get a turn in and does an AoE deny skill, chances are it's gonna miss. And I think I mentioned enough why running Divine Protection could be a good idea, but the reason you'd want to run Archangelic Nimbus on this skill set is just to make sure that you do wipe out the enemy common monster. Yeah, I said that most likely your deny monster will finish off the common using its AoE skill, but as you know, there are a couple of things that could happen. For example, you could miss with the AoE skill, or quite possibly the enemy might be running some life runes on their common monster, so then it's gonna survive the hit. So you never know, it could be beneficial to you to run an AoE, especially because this is a 40 damage AoE skill, which is especially gonna be powerful if you choose to run 2 strength runes on Uriel. And yeah, that's gonna conclude my analysis on Uriel. He's certainly not one of the most impressive monsters. He does have a really impressive skill, but given his stats, they just aren't that good. And the reason his stats aren't good is because he's one of the original monsters. Anyways, that doesn't mean he isn't usable in Team Wars, you just have to build him to be usable. So you just give him 1 or 2 strength runes, and it would help if those are high level strength runes. If they're low level, it might not help you out too much. Also, I should mention, if it's a Team Wars involving legendary and 2 elements, then that's another example where Uriel can be useful. And in that scenario, you'd want to make him a supportive monster, therefore give him the supportive skill set I mentioned, and give him that 1 life rune and 2 team speed runes. And with that being said, I want to thank everyone who made it to the very end of the video. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, it really means a lot to me. Let me know what you guys thought about this video, let me know what you guys think about this monster. And you know what, I also want to know how many of you actually have this monster, because I've been playing this game for over 2 years and I still don't have him. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great amazing day or a great amazing night. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions. 2 years and I don't have them.